Welcome everybody to the CEU Executive MBA online and on-site open day. I'm Thomas Lamel, I'm the Senior Program Manager, and I will guide you through this evening. We will start with the program presentation. You will have the opportunity to meet a current participant. You will have the opportunity to enjoy a keynote presentation by one of our faculty members, and in the end, we will conclude with a Q&A session. During the whole event, you're very much invited to shoot in your questions in the chat box via Zoom, or just raise your hands here on campus or on Vienna campus, and we will collect your questions for the Q&A session in the end. So let's get started. So I want to start with the general question, like, is an MBA still worth it? Because you don't have to go very far these days to encounter that we are witnessing a set of fundamental transformations in the world in a century. Like in 2008, we've seen a big financial crisis. In 2015, we've seen a large refugee crisis. And now, right now, we are witnessing the biggest pandemic in over a century. But these changes are part of a much broader set of transformation that is taking place. And some of them are positive, but some of them are quite dangerous, to be honest. And the question is, how do we as business professionals, how do you as business professionals prepare for this challenging and unpredictable environment? And the obvious question is an MBA the way to do it? And we have seen an explosion of online education in the last year, and I'll show you why we believe our MBA is worth it. So if you're interested in further education, if you're interested in MBA education, you usually start searching for an MBA in the city you live in. What you tend to find is mostly a pretty vanilla standard MBA curriculum. The faculty who are delivering the program are mostly local. And so is the student body. The internationality of the student body is relatively low. Some of these programs in Europe, in the UK, or in the US can be quite expensive, starting at 80 or even 100,000 euro. But an advantage is that there is no work interruption. A local program allows you not to leave your job. If you contrast this with the top business schools in the world, they often have a very mission-driven, very differentiated curriculum. They offer a certain expertise, a certain perspective. And because of their full-time format, their student body is actually very international. But you're leaving the labor market, you're leaving the job market for at least 1 or even 2 years, which is an additional financial burden. These programs are rather expensive at more than 100 or 120,000 euros of tuition. And you might even have to take your family to the new location of the MBA program. So what we do at CEU is to offer the best of 2 worlds. There is no work interruption thanks to the practical and flexible modular format. I will explain it later. The Executive MBA is mission-driven. It's called the Executive MBA for the open world. I will explain the philosophy later. We have an international student body because of the modularity of the program. People from around the world are able to travel, to commute to the modules that are taking place only a couple of times a year. And by the way, according to the Times Higher Education, we are the second most international university in the world. And this is being reflected in our cohorts. I already talked about the quality of the program, but let me introduce you to some of our faculty members. If you're new to finance, you will meet Joy Chan, who is a uniquely gifted educator. Generation after generation of our students tell us how she's just unique in explaining very complex financial concepts. Or for strategy, you will meet Professor Yusuf Akbar, who has taught in more than 40 countries and advises leading Fortune 500 companies. For economics, we have Mark Kaufman with a PhD from Harvard, an expert in applied theory. you will meet him in one of the modules as well. For leadership, we have Austin, our world-class psychologist with executive education experience on 4 continents. He will lead the way in this subject. Sophia Barani with an PhD from LSE. She's an expert on the future of work, to generalize it, which includes automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics. Or our faculty director, Professor Maciej Kieślowski, with a JST from Yale, an MBA from INSEAD, and an MPA from Princeton. He's an expert on regulation and non-market strategy. You will meet him in one of our modules or in more of the modules too. The course on big data and artificial intelligence will be taught by Miklos Koren, one of the leading experts and scholars in the field in Europe with a Harvard PhD. If you're already experienced in finance, you'll be placed in the advanced track course with Adam Zawodowski, a leading expert on complex investments with a PhD from Princeton. Or Ais Susenius, a PhD from with a PhD from Central Florida and with distinguished expertise on marketing and emotional marketing. And last but not least, for innovation, you'll have Mike Labelle, who holds a prestigious EU Energy Jean Monnet chair. Meet some of our visiting faculty. We have Professor Christian Selos from Stanford University, or Miklos Savary from Columbia University, Omar Hernandez from Berkeley, Professor Hui Chen from the University in Zurich, or Dr. Milena Nikolova from Behavior Smart in Bulgaria. So here's what the program looks like. It's a 10-module program, as you see. The dates you see on that screen are not going to change. So you can basically plan your studying around professional and family activities based on these dates. As you can see, we have 3 modules in the first year, 4 modules in the second year, and again, 3 years in the third year, which gives you full flexibility and balance in your life. We are piggybacking around popular European holidays like May 1st, August 15th, or November 1st, when it's easier for you to take time off. In the summers, you can see that our bespoke and cutting-edge leadership program takes place here in Budapest, and you'll have the opportunity to benefit from electives from the faculty in the world we invite to teach your classes. So eventually there will come a day when you finish with us and join the CEU alumni network from around the world. As I already said, CEU is the second most international university in the world, and you can rely on an active elite network on every continent. We have city-level chapters, we have country-level chapters. Basically, wherever you go in the world, wherever you are, you'll find CEU alumni to interact with, to mingle with, and to network with. This network is a network that you can count on, and one of the key assets that we have. The alumni network is organized through our alumni relations department and through social media, and it's very approachable. So you can basically easily reach out to them through social media, through Facebook and LinkedIn, if you want to make new friends or if you're looking for professional contacts. So the question is, how are we even able to offer such a high quality program? The answer lies in our founder and benefactor, George Soros, who created CEU with the mission to promote open society. Just recently, George Soros made a further contribution to CEU's mission by offering another $1 billion in endowment to create the Open Society University Network, which means we are the best endowed university in Europe. So what does the Executive MBA for the Open World mean? What makes CEU unique? First of all, when we talk about the open world, we mean skepticism towards dogmas, towards hierarchies, towards privileges, both in context of how we teach, but also in composition of the cohort. Diversity is key to creating such a successful program, and it's not an empty marketing catchphrase for us. Secondly, we believe in debate and radical rational thinking. Every idea can be challenged. We believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives and fake news, because it's narratives that create polarization in societies nowadays. And we believe the best way to challenge this narrative-based discourse is to make arguments based on facts and realities, which is the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of open societies. We are fundamentally opposed to any kind of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. The way we finance our scholarships and fellowships means we create opportunities for people who traditionally have not been able to actually join such programs. Because we see managers not as people who deal with businesses or resources, but we also believe that managers go beyond that. They are positive change agents. And our participants, our professionals, are coming from very diverse backgrounds, not just with regard to nationalities and cultures and languages, but also with professional backgrounds. We have people in the current cohorts coming from arts and culture, coming from the entrepreneurship, coming from the corporate world, coming from the public sector, from NGOs and human rights activism. So what does the typical executive MBA classroom looks like? Currently, we have 65 managers with an average of 14 years of work experience, including a minimum of 3 years of leadership or managerial experience. As you can see from the background of the image, we use state-of-the-art classroom technology and setups in order to facilitate discussion and interaction, because learning is more than just a one-way street from the teacher to the student. It's also communication, it's also learning experience from the student to the teacher and among students. We make use of case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you would find in most local MBA programs. And our approach is, what we want to do with you is to take you, experts in your specific field, from this level of functional expertise to the level of strategic expertise, to the strategic level. We have invested very much in the top quality online experience. Every participant can choose to join online if, for example, no visa are issued, or if traveling is too dangerous for you, or if traveling is just not possible. We have studio-grade microphones capturing lecturers and participants, because, as I already mentioned, it's not about only listening to your teacher, it's also about interacting with your fellows and listening to your fellows and being listened to. We have invested in large screens. The people here right now on campus in Vienna and on Budapest can see them right here in class, and high quality cameras to capture body language, to capture comments that your fellows are making. We have created physical virtual breakout rooms for support teams. Support teams are not just a vehicle to enable group work for you. Of course, group work is an essential part of the program. But within these support teams, you will be exposed to another level of diversity, because you will not be in a group with people coming from the same country, coming from the same industry, coming from the same linguistic background. So you are exposed to diversity. And this is where the learning experience kicks in, because you are experiencing new perspectives, new approaches, new decision-making styles. And this is where you start with your learning experience. We have created personalized virtual backgrounds and, of course, high-quality individual support on every level of your journey with us. But speaking of virtual backgrounds, as you can see from the picture right here on the left, you just cannot see your fellows, but you can see their names. So it's easier for you in an online conversation, if you're joining online or if your fellows are joining online, who said what. And it's color-coded so you can see the support teams, the groups those fellows are in. I've already mentioned our financing approach, how we are able to even afford a program at such competitive cost of only 29,000 euro. Tuition is 29,000 euro for the whole program and includes all the credits. In order to defray other costs you have, we have negotiated special rates with partner hotels here in Budapest or here in Vienna, and we have negotiated discounts with partner airlines like Austrian Airlines and Lufthansa Group, who will bring you to Vienna and Budapest at a cheaper rate. I want to add something to the tuition. I've already mentioned our financial endowment. We are the best financially endowed university in Europe, and we are passing on this financial advantage to our participants, to students, through cheaper tuition to start with, and through scholarships and fellowships. So I would like you to join this intellectual journey of your lifetime, to join the open world. The application deadline is March 27 next year, and the application starts online on our website. However, looking at this deadline in March, I encourage you to apply as soon as possible, because we have a first come, first served policy, and we will administer your application once you have completed and submitted your application. And you're even able to reserve your study seat at such an early stage of the application cycle. You're invited to book individual one-on-one consultations with me. If you're joining online, you can already book them through our website. I will join the link later in the chat box. And I will be happy to talk to our guests here on campus if they have any questions about their applications or scholarships. So I think it's pretty clear that we are passionate about the program. We're very much committed to the program. But I think it's another thing to hear about the program from people who actually are in the program. And that's why we've invited Peter Langmark tonight in order to talk to you. Peter Langmark is current participant of the Executive MBA. He's mentor at Yellow Rabbit. He's executive board member of the Green Fox Academy. He's investor of Conetic and Rescan and managing partner at LabCope. And I would like to invite you to the floor, Peter, to have a short conversation. If you could briefly introduce yourself to our guests online and, well, just tell us about your motivation, why you chose CEU executive back then.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Langmark. I am an entrepreneur, so I can choose any of those fancy titles which you were kind enough to list. But basically, I'm an entrepreneur in the background in venture capital and IT businesses. And I started to look for a program because my background is quite atypical, both for being a business executive and in general for IT, because I have originally studied fine art and then did a deep dive in cultural theory research. And I felt that after a decade of running my own businesses, I need a framework where I can structure my knowledge. And of course, in certain things, because of the experience, I have gained quite deep knowledge, but there were different fields of running a business where I was quite weak knowledge. So I was looking for a program which can give me that holistic understanding. I was not looking for a specialized MBA in finance or entrepreneurship or other field, but a generalist one, which gives me a good understanding of wide variety of fields, from marketing to finance, and so on and so forth. So that was my primary goal. The second goal was to find a program which is international, and I'm from Budapest, and I wanted to find a program which focuses on Central and Eastern European people, because this is where I run my business, and this is where I need connections the most. Of course, it's great to have worldwide population of a university, but at the end of the day, for me at least, it matters a lot that it's quite strong in a European network, and I can gain access to that. Third, I was looking for a flexible program. I have two kids. I run several businesses. So that kind of modularity was the only way for me to do it. I couldn't, manage every weekend. I cannot quit for 1 or 2 years from my own companies. And I could not travel to the other side of the world every once in a while. So I was looking for a program which is somewhere in the region. And to be honest, primarily for quality reasons, I have outruled local Hungarian universities quite early in that process, even though I've studied some of them here in Budapest, because I was looking for a different level. And to be honest, I think that offering, what you have heard, it's quite fair for the quality you get. So I think this is the best what you can get for that money, for that time, for that community, for that quality of education. And I'm not saying that because I've been forced to do that, but this is how I ended up applying only to this program when I wanted to start my MBA. So these were my key motivations, and I'm really happy to answer any question from you.
You just mentioned faculty. I think I browsed faculty members already. All of our faculty members are coming from top US Ivy League universities. They're coming from Stanford, Harvard, Berkeley, MIT, etc., and have the best credentials in the academic world. And they are teaching as visiting faculty or part of our faculty here at CEU in the program, and they're approachable for you. They're always you can always email them, and if you have any questions in the program, they are here for you. And there are no hierarchies. It's no Mr. Professor, Mr. Doctor. It's just, hey, John, hey, Hui, please can you help me? I have a question. I have a suggestion to make. It's very easy, approachable.
True. I have fact checked that.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you get in touch with our faculty already?
Yeah, of course.
Well done. You've talked about the diversity in our program. Just to give you an impression on the current class that we have recruited last year, we have people coming in the current cohort coming from 5 continents, as far away from Vancouver. That person's flying into every module 3 times a year to Vienna, Budapest. We have 1 student from Vladivostok. We have students from South Africa, from India, from the Middle East, and of course from Europe. Even from Australia and Malaysia, we have people in the current cohort. So it really shows the trust people put in us in these difficult times, and the trust in the quality of the program, because these people are traveling so far in these difficult times in order to join this program and to be part of this international community. I already mentioned the diverse backgrounds. It's not just nationalities. It's not just gender identities. It's not just age. We also have diversity when it comes to age. The youngest people in the program are in their early 30s, I'd say, and the oldest people in the program are in their mid-50s, late 50s. So the average age is around 40-ish, 40-something, which perfectly reflects our application approach, because we are looking for experienced managers with at least 8 years of work experience and 3 years of managerial experience. Thank you, Peter. I mean, you mentioned everything that I talked about in this presentation. Thank you very much, and we'll see you around next module in March, right?
Definitely.
In Vienna. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to come to the next part of our today's open day, which is our keynote presentation by Professor Tommy Lee. Tommy Lee is joining us from Vienna via Zoom, joining here in Budapest via Zoom, and joining on site for our Vienna guest. He's member of the CEU Executive MBA Finance and Accounting Faculty Group. He's got a PhD and master's degree from the University of Toronto. He's engaged with leading corporate, governmental, and academic institutions, including the Bank of Canada, CBC Hong Kong, the National University of Singapore, European Financial Association, the National Futures Association, and European Financial Data Institute. And he will talk about shadow banking tonight. Tommy, thank you very much for joining us tonight. The floor is yours. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the chat box. I will collect your questions for the Q&A session.
Thank you for coming to another open day at the MBA. I'm Tommy Lee with a PhD from University of Toronto. And I would say another benefit of this region is not just the European connections, but the weather is quite a bit better than Toronto, I must say. It's maybe a few degrees warmer and maybe about 20% less humid. So this is a good benefit. And where you'll see me in this program is I'm co-teaching with Adam Zawdowski, who has a PhD from Princeton, the finance module, the advanced finance module, if you're somebody who's already familiar with finance. So because I teach people who are more, have greater knowledge of finance than the average, my research is also on topics that are, I suppose, quite deep into the details of finance. Specifically today, I'll be talking about so-called shadow banking or perhaps shadow trading, by which I mean the over-the-counter trading of financial assets such as stocks and bonds. Now, this is an entire market. Why is it called a shadow? It's an entire market that is in fact enormously larger than the markets that people have heard of, NASDAQ, NYSE, and so on. And yet most people have just never even heard of it. Yet it is multiple times larger. Okay, so what is OTC? What is OTC trading or over-the-counter trading? Well, it's best to define it in contrast to the things that people know very well. Specifically, big stock markets such as NASDAQ, Bloomberg for perhaps more exotic financial assets, MTS for bonds, and you can think about NYSE, the London Stock Exchange, the Budapest Stock Exchange, and so on. Now, these exchanges, we've all heard of them. They're very transparent, they're very competitive, and they're very easily accessible. Anyone, you and I, can trade directly on them. By contrast, the shadow market, the over-the-counter market, works in a very, very different way. There's no centralized exchange. There's no central market. How you trade in it is you got to know somebody from a major bank, such as Citibank, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, and so on. And in this region, something like OTP or UniCredit, where you have to know somebody there and you have to contact them by phone or through online. And then you do the trades completely outside of a centralized market. Now, over-the-counter market, as you can imagine, it's very opaque. No one really knows what's going on there as much. It's not as accessible. Even myself, being a financial professor, I can tell you I cannot trade over-the-counter because I call Goldman Sachs and they'll say, well, how much can I buy? And I'll say some number, which I'm not going to reveal, and they'll laugh me out at the door, right? So despite this, what you'll find is that if you compare the values that's traded over the counter versus the exchange, the over the counter market is multiple, depending on the asset class, but it can be dozens of times the size. For credit derivatives, which is the most important, possibly the most important financial asset class, the notional value of credit derivatives that are traded on the exchanges is only about $70 trillion or so, okay, only. But if you look at the over-the-counter market, it is about 6 to 7 times larger. And if you look at particular asset classes such as swaps, which you might have heard of from the recession, CDSs and so on that helped to cause the recession 10 years ago, 95% is traded over the counter, not on these exchanges. And for corporate bonds, most of it is traded in a similar way. Even for US exchange-listed stocks, they have the word exchange in their name, and yet some, about 20% or so, maybe a little bit less, is traded over the counter. So in my research that I'm presenting to you today, which is co-authored with Chaojun Wang from Wharton, in this paper, we try to provide an explanation for why the over-the-counter market, despite its disadvantages, not accessible, opaque, and so on, why can it be so large? And our explanation is a very simple one. Suppose you have a world where the over-the-counter market doesn't even exist. It's just a single exchange, let's call it NASDAQ. And you can have two different types of traders out there. There's traders like AIG, which is an insurance company, which is mostly trading for, to manage their risk. You know, they're innocent. They need to trade because sometimes they need cash, sometimes they need to reduce their portfolio risk and so on. On the other hand, there's 2 Sigma, which is one of the world's largest hedge funds, who are trading to make a profit. They buy whenever they think something is too cheap, and they sell whenever they think something is too expensive. So every time you trade with somebody like 2 Sigma, you're afraid that you might be losing money on it because they know something that you don't, right? So suppose the world only has NASDAQ, and in NASDAQ, there can only be a single price. People post a bunch of different prices, there's competition, and in the exchange, you end up buying or selling at very particular prices, you know, one set of prices. So what's going to happen is AIG, which is simply trading for no reason but to just manage their risk, will end up with the same price as 2 Sigma, which everybody knows might be incurring losses on those other people that you're trading with, because they'll only trade with you if they think they can make a profit. So the result is that AIG gets too high of a price, and 2 Sigma gets too low of a price because the two are mixed together and they end up with the same price. You end up with some medium price in between. So AIG pays a little bit too much, and 2 Sigma pays a little bit too little. And then you introduce an over-the-counter market. What's an over-the-counter market? Well, suppose we introduce something like Goldman Sachs, to provide OTC trading. Now what Goldman Sachs can do is Goldman Sachs can go to AIG and say, well, I know that you are only doing simple trades just to manage your risk. You're not out there to impose losses on me. And so if you're AIG, I'm going to give you a really good price. But then if 2 Sigma were to go to Goldman Sachs sees that, well, I know there's a good chance if I trade with you, I'm going to lose money on this trade. So I'm going to give you a bad trade, a bad price. And so what happens? The OTC dealers, such as Goldman Sachs, can cream skim safe traders like AIG into the over-the-counter market, which are a lot of the trades, whereas everybody else, like 2 Sigma, who are more likely to incur losses on the other people, they stick to the exchange. Because if they go to the OTC market, then they'll get a very bad price, right? So the result is that OTC trading ends up, on the face of it, helps these safe traders that are not going to impose losses on other people, while leaving all those more toxic or more traders who are imposing losses on others in the exchange, right? This is our explanation. Now, this, what I can tell you is somebody who went through the publication process, this is not enough to make a good publication, right? So we have some other things, which the details of which perhaps we'll leave for a seminar, but I'll give you a very high level of some of the things that we found. First is that our model, the paper is a mathematical model, and the mathematical model predicts a particular empirical data facts. It predicts that you should see something in the data, and specifically, the model predicts that when there are high, something that's traded mostly on an exchange should also have the bad prices of the exchange. What does this mean? People are more likely to trade on the exchange when the prices on the exchange is the worst, which is a little bit puzzling, but our model has an explanation for this, which let's not get into details now. But our model predicts this, and we're the first ones in this paper to actually check whether there is this correlation, this positive correlation between the amount that's traded on exchanges and the prices on exchanges. And in fact, we find with various statistical techniques that this is in fact the case for all sorts of different assets. Okay. And beyond this, our paper says something about policy, because if we can't say something about what people can do to improve the world or improve business and so on, then the paper only has a very limited use for the world, right? And specifically, the kicker of the paper says that when you observe that an asset is mostly traded over the counter, such as the swaps that we talked about, then those are precisely the assets where you want to get rid of the OTC market. So whenever you see in the world that something is traded mostly over the counter, getting rid of it would actually be beneficial for investors as a whole. This is our main kicker in for policy. And specifically, if we were to look at specific regulations, these two statements here is powerful, maybe not completely fair. So let me backtrack a little bit. But it says, in general, our model will suggest that the Dodd-Frank Act in the US has goals that are more in line with social welfare than MiFID II regulations in the EU, although our model will also say that the methods that the MiFID II is using is more efficient than the methods that the Dodd-Frank is using. So actually, our model is a little bit more circumspect about which jurisdictions' regulations are better. Okay, and this is it. Thank you.
Okay. Thomas, should we go into the debate?
Yes, please. I would like to invite Maciej Kieślowski. You've already heard him, our faculty director, and would like to involve him in the academic debate. Maciej, you'll be interacting with students, and you have collected questions already, I'm sure, from the audience online.
I at least saw them on the chat, but like if you want to ask questions, I mean, please feel free to ask him fresher questions. I'll give you a little moment. Thank you so much, Tommy. This is amazing, and but like I want to, kind of. I am a law professor, so I am particularly interested in this aspect, which is your critique of those two. So basically, one option is to get rid of the OTC markets. The other one is to kind of solve their problems, yes, save the lives. So like kind of a little challenging you, like why, and in defense of our beloved European Union, yes, why not to allow AIG to have better prices and solve the disclosure and informational problems with OTC, which is kind of what MiFID II tries to do, but by creating this super transparent, but still only for safe guys, supposedly safe guys, yes? So what's your take on this?
Oh, so let me go into slight detail about the intuition for why we get these policy results. So why is the OTC market potentially bad? It is because, as we said before, not everyone gets access to the OTC market. So what happens is that some people like AIG, especially big institutions, they might be able to go to the OTC market and get these good prices, but everyone who doesn't have access to the OTC market are stuck in the exchange with people like 2 Sigma and so on. So by taking selectively, cream skimming selectively, a few people who are going to be the safest from the exchange, the OTC market makes the prices on these exchanges worse, which means that all those people who do not have access to the OTC market, who end up having to go to the exchange anyway, they suffer because of these higher prices. Mm-hmm. And where these people tend to suffer most acutely, and where people who end up going to the OTC market benefits the least, is precisely those markets where most people are going to the OTC market to begin with.
So it all comes down to the fact that you can't trade on the OTC market. Yeah, we need to promote access for people like you.
I mean,
kind of.
I mean, as somebody in finance, yeah, my self-interest.
Questions, colleagues, also in Budapest? Any comments, questions?
Would you like to comment?
I'm lost.
We have a lost student, Maciej.
We have a lost student.
Please,
so what's unclear? I mean, there are basically two options. You can clear or you can trade on a clear, transparent exchange, or you can call your friends and basically say, let's buy and sell something at a very good price. And this is a very big
commissioning. This
say
is
it again.
Commissioning. I said this is basically commissioning.
Yeah, I didn't understand your final word.
This is basically commissioning. Maciej, I'm just translating. This is basically commissioning.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I
if you
think
know
in
the
fact you
people,
could.
you are better off. If you don't know these people, you are the poor guy.
Exactly. So if you know these people and you happen to be somebody who trades mostly safely, so you're not trading on some information or analysis, but you're just trading for risk management, something that that's not going to necessarily incur losses on the people that you trade with, then you benefit. Everyone else would not benefit. So this is the distribution of how people are affected by this. So this is.
So how come you are lost? You are not lost because you ask a very good question.
Well, because
Okay, yes, please.
It feels like you get kind fooled by the financing system that we are living in.
That's the problem, huh?
I mean, it's partly what we're saying, and just to connect this to our policy implication, I said that okay, these 2 points, just to be sexy or marketing. I said Dodd-Frank good, MiFID II bad. This is actually not true. MiFID II does something very crucial. That is what our model suggests we should be doing, which is MiFID II actually just pushes. It just says you cannot trade certain things over the counter anymore. It's just by doing regulatory diktat, and usually regulatory diktat is a bad thing. But what our model shows is that if you allow just completely market in a competitive market outcome, it is those assets that should least likely that are the worst when they're traded over the counter. It's those assets that will be mostly traded over the counter. So essentially, what happens in just a competitive equilibrium is the opposite of what is good for investors as a whole. And this is why the paper argues that the MiFID II's approach of just regulatory diktat is really the only way. Whereas Dodd-Frank Act, you actually see this in the data as well. Dodd-Frank Act instead just tries to encourage more trades in the exchanges rather than OTC, and it basically didn't work at all. In fact, for some assets after Dodd-Frank, there was even more OTC trading. So this is in line with our predictions that says that if you just leave the markets completely be in this topic, then you could actually get results that are the opposite of what is good for investors as a whole. So, here it's a finance paper, so we look at investors as a whole, society as a whole. Okay, that's too big of a question. I'll leave that up to labor economists or whatever, but the macroeconomists. But, from investors as a whole perspective, sometimes it's good to have a regulatory diktat. And this is why we think MiFID II, it does something good. Right?
Yes, go ahead.
What about the security of this OTC? I mean, I think this opens a broad door of money laundering or something like this, isn't it?
Yes. So in fact, we are in the paper, although usually academic papers tend to go very soft when it comes to policy because academics, we don't always want to take a strong stance. And of course, any of our models, any of our results have assumptions, right? This is the only way you can have a theory that's understood by a human mind, by simplifying things. So we don't want to be too strong, but in our case, we actually simplify things in a way that's maximum as good as possible for the OTC market, because we assume, for instance, that the prices in the OTC market are competitive. In reality, prices in the OTC market are not competitive, so they'll be even worse. And also, we don't deal with this transparency. Exchanges are very transparent, which means everyone and the regulators know at any point what's going on. OTC market, one of the problems during the recession was that nobody knew that AIG, which in our story is a good guy, but back in the recession they were not so good. And one of the reasons why they could fail so spectacularly was because the regulators just had no idea what they were owning, what they have traded, because they were doing most trades over the counter, which didn't need to be reported, or so nobody knew what they were doing. So we are ignoring all of these costs, and yet we still find these results. So we think that if anything, if you were to incorporate opacity, these other elements of the OTC market, it would just strengthen our results even more.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, both of your points bring this, 500-pound gorilla in the room, which is like, and like, it's so funny if you think about it, that like AIG, which like, basically almost destroy the entire global economy, is a safe guy in this story. Yes, and I think that is a huge. I want to know what you think about it, Tom. But like, this is a huge problem that actually a lot of studies about the financial crisis say that hedge funds actually did not contribute negatively, and some even contribute positively by very quickly flagging to the market that there is a problem. Yes, so like actually the bad guys in 2008 and before were actually one of the best, and the good guys were one of the worst, and they were not safe. Yes, and the people who were picking up their phones were just idiots.
Yeah, there was this is sort of, this is not my research, but very, very recently, there was a paper out in one of the top journals, which looked at particularly this. It seemed, according to the evidence in the very recent research, it seems that back then there was no good people, and perhaps now there was no one who was completely blameless, because at the time, investors were betting on being bailed out. In fact, if you look at the prices and if you look at the market expectations, everyone at the market were acting as if they'll be bailed out if things turn bad. So of course, if you think that you're going to be bailed out if things turn bad, then you don't worry about the risks that you add to the market or whatever, because at the worst case scenario, you get bailed out. And in the best case scenario, you make a ton of money by doing very risky trades. And there's strong evidence that back up till 2008, and actually now as well, investors and financiers, they expect some kind of a bailout if there is something horrible that happens, which is a different topic altogether.
I'm forwarding a question from the online audience, which I collected. Does cryptocurrency play a role in this concept or in this environment?
Oh, yeah, the joke is you can ignore all of finance, just buy a bunch of Bitcoin and you'll be rich. Yeah, no, that was not investment advice. Do not do that. Yeah, do not do that. So there's some of the best things about cryptocurrency is that unlike a lot of parts of the existing finance, it is extremely transparent in that everybody knows exactly what everyone's doing in one way. But on the other hand, the bad thing about it is you know what's going on. You know exactly at each point which account is doing what and what kind of contracts are running and what these contracts look like in this cryptocurrency realm. But what you don't know is who's owning these accounts. And that whole market, maybe it's too early to tell, but you definitely do have a lot of instability and you have a lot of illegal things. If you're really familiar with cryptocurrency, there was like the largest cryptocurrency exchange was called Mt. Gox. That was one that's famous because the people who owned Mt. Gox one day literally just closed it. It was the biggest exchange for cryptocurrency, and they just literally just closed it overnight, took all the cash and left, and disappeared from the face of the planet. And because these cryptocurrencies are so anonymous, it's essentially impossible to track a lot of these people down who just disappeared with I don't want to say billion, but certainly hundreds of millions of dollars worth of money, of other people's money. So one of the benefits of some of the, historical banks and so on, I just switched from Raiffeisen to online bank, and it's awesome. So, I'm not a lover of traditional banks necessarily, but from their perspective, they do some awesome things. Like, for instance, this type of Mt. Gox type of just mass robbery would not happen under a watch of a traditional bank, for instance, because they do have a long history of regulation and so on, right? So cryptocurrency, it's in the future, I think it has a lot of promise. Now, would I, if my mom were to call me and say, should I put my savings into Bitcoin or Ethereum? I would say, I'm not sure you're going to live long enough. Like, she's very healthy and she'll live long, but I'm not sure that you'll live long enough for that to be a safe bet. So this is what I would say. Yeah.
Speaking of cryptocurrency, I would like to add that Shermin Washengier, author of Token Economy and godmother of the cryptocurrency scene and founder of the Blockchain Hub, will be speaking for CEU EMBA participants in our format of the Fireside Hour for our participants in December. So just so you know that we are very much taking on this zeitgeist topics and invite people to lecture us on these topics and to engage with them.
Which, by the way, doesn't mean that we agree with them. Yes, and if you join the program, I think we are kind of moving slowly towards Q&A. But like if you join the program, you will see that when we have these fireside hours with distinguished practitioners, we invite them. It's on Zoom, so that people don't need to travel for that. I mean, there is a lot, like we don't promise kind of, obedient audience, which is just going to nod and say, yes, you are amazing, boss. Yes, I mean, we have a lot of the spirit of challenging the speakers. I mean, we are challenged in class all the time, but like even our guests. So I think that's something what you were, Thomas, saying so nicely about the open society spirit. I think you can see it in this, but that also means we can invite controversial people, yes, like the cryptocurrency person, because engagement is not endorsement. Yes, it's very important.
You already mentioned moving on to the Q&A part, and I think that's the perfect time to move there. I've collected a couple of questions from the audience. For you, Maciej, and for me, and I would like to begin with you on the question: if there are any exams, is there a thesis?
Okay. Yes, there are some. Oh, okay. There are some exams, but the way it works is exams. So we have these modules that Thomas showed you. Exams are not part of the module. So in the module, you just have like exchange, group work, discussions. We don't like waste your time during those modules or like sit in a class writing an exam. What instead happens is that we invite you to, during sort of a 10-day or 11-day exam period, you can take an exam online. And basically the way it works is you... Okay, I hear myself. The way it works is you go to our course management site, you open your exam, you need to finish it within 2 or 3 hours. Yes, so, but you can take it whenever you want during the time. That, of course, also means our exams are open book, which is kind of not only for technical reasons, it would be difficult to have a closed book exam when you are at home, but also it's kind of a philosophy of the program. I mean, you are mid-career managers, you are executives, yes? So we really want you to kind of test your knowledge by solving problems, not like reciting things from memory. Yes, so this is the exam. What was the second part of the question?
The thesis.
Oh yeah, so there is no master thesis. Our approach to thesis is called the capstone project, and capstone is like a project that you design with our capstone director, Mike Labelle, the innovation guy. And a basic idea is between 3 and 12 months when you come together at an agreement of a project that applies what you have learned at CEU Executive MBA. And there are two ways, two components that must be. The project can be everything. Some people take an externship, so for a few months change their workplace. Some people start a business in our innovations lab, in our incubator, which is an awesome award-winning place. Some people do a consulting project or a non-profit pro bono project. But whatever you do, it needs to have two components. One is called strategic analysis component. Basically, you take all those frameworks, like the ones that Tommy showed you, and you show us that you can apply it to solve a real life problem. That is not only academic theory, yes, but that you can apply it to practice. And the second is the leadership component. And we want to see here that you can actually change things, again, using what you've learned in this program, that you can change things on the ground. If you do those two, consider your master thesis ticked. But it doesn't need to be a thick volume, in a nice, binding. It needs to be something that happens in the real world. Okay? Maybe here some questions. Wait, maybe here, yes.
What are the preconditions for this kind of MBA, EMBA?
What are the
preconditions for this kind of?
Oh, just for application, yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. So we have a transparent process, and it's like I think we are the only program that I know that actually lists. If you go to our website embaceo.edu under apply, you actually can see all the 47 admission criteria on which we evaluate every file that we see. So like business schools love to create this kind of magic of like, oh, this is like very subtle. But I can tell you, I've been in many institutions. Every institution has a kind of a protocol. But and we decided, hey, we are open society university. Why don't we just publish the entire protocol? And actually, we have an interactive feature, and maybe Thomas can post it on the chat, where you can actually, it's kind of a game. Oh, thank you. It's kind of a game feature when you can like give yourself stars in each of the 47 categories from like 0 to 5. And our algorithm will give you like your chances for admission, yes, based on your self-assessment. So it's very transparent. Now, so okay, I'm not going to go through 47, but I give you a sense. We are very good at bringing people who made it at the, let's call it functional level. So you are in a field, you are an accountant, you are a non-profit leader, you are a marketing specialist and HR specialist, finance specialist. That's why we have an advanced track in finance, because yes, you don't need to be the beginner in finance or beginner in data analytics. We have some people who are managers of finance units in corporations or work for big investment banks. So you made it at the functional level, and now you are thinking about kind of moving from the functional to the strategic level. It's the level where you manage across functions, across organizations, across industries, sometimes maybe even across economic sectors. Yes, and we know that there are certain hard and soft skills that are needed at this strategic level, and we give you kind of, the program is tailor-made to kind of give you this mix of those skills. So that implies whom we are looking for, because we are an open society university. We are quite qualified, but we don't want to keep kind of exclusive, elite atmosphere. We are against those things. We are against hierarchies. So what we are the reason why we are, not admitting many people who are applying is not because we want to be perceived as elite. It's because we know what this program is good for, bringing people from functional to strategic level. And we sometimes often have applications of people who are not at that point of their careers. And there is nothing wrong with it. We have actually great programs at CEU for kind of more entry or early level professionals, but this is not one of them. So that's basically what we are looking for. We are looking for seeing that you reach this functional excellence in whatever you do. And the second thing we are looking for is your curiosity, because very often those two don't come together. When you reach a functional, mastery, you lose all your curiosity. You don't feel you want to learn. you feel maybe others should learn from you, and you may be very, very well right, but you don't have the appetite for learning. And this is not a diploma mill. There are like so many, for-profit universities which will give you an easy MBA. So if you don't have like fun coming back to school, being in a university environment, and you can be 32 and have this need, and you can be 58 and have this need. And we have participants like this who enjoy the fact that they are, on this side of the discussion, which is very interactive. But you still, it's a place to learn, to kind of absorb like a sponge. Yes. So we want those two things, which very often don't come together. That's why it's a unique setup. Yes, we want you to be accomplished in your functional field and still hungry for more, for kind of bigger picture, for going out of your comfort zones. So that's basically it. And this is when you see the 47 conditions, these are kind of operationalizations of those two principles.
Does the question also aim at admission requirements as far as formal criteria are concerned?
So yeah, so I think I that's what I did. Yes. If you want to add, please feel free.
No, I mentioned it during the talk, and you just elaborated on that. The next question is if there are any, if there are financial support or scholarships, fellowships. I would like to take that question, if you don't mind, Maciej.
Sure.
Yes, there is plenty of financial support available because we're proud and happy to pass on our financial advantage to students, participants. We have basically 3 streams of financial support. We have the Open World Scholarship, which aims at people who are aligned with our mission, who have some kind of experience or some practice in defying barriers, in promoting open society values, in breaking down barriers, let's put it that way. That could be from the corporate world, mostly from my experience, people from the NGO sector, because of the nature of NGO, apply for this kind of fellowship, but it does not exclude people coming from the corporate field, to be frank. The second stream is the need-based scholarship, which only takes into consideration your income situation and the country of residence you're living in, because of course a marketing manager in Ukraine has a different income than a marketing manager on the same position in Germany, and we're taking this into consideration. It's non-competitive, in contrast to our merit-based country-specific fellowships, which are competitive and aim at certain countries or certain industries or certain professions or certain target groups. For example, we have an international female leaders fellowship in order to promote business women and to reach gender equality. For us, we're done talking about gender equality. We want to actively promote it, not just promote it, we want to actively reach it. And we're investing in future talent with this regard. We have an international LGBTIQ fellowship. We have a fellowship for managers with a disability. We have a fellowship for Romani managers, etc., etc. We have a diversity fellowship in France. We have a fellowship for BAME managers in the UK. There's so many fellowships. I would strongly encourage you, if you're interested in those fellowships, to book a one-on-one consultation with me and to get personalized advice, because I cannot mention all the fellowships that we have right now. And I would be happy to advise you on our scholarships and fellowships that we have in place.
Other questions here? Yeah. Yes, please.
Do you have the statistics for what your ex-alumni tend to go into after they finish the program? And would you have any example in what way this reflects like the open society values actually when they go on?
Yes. So actually, most of our alumni, because of the nature of the program, most of our alumni stay in their organization, just advance in their organization. There is a group that particularly significant group that switches towards entrepreneurship and they are often associated with our incubator innovation lab, which is kind of guiding our, interested participants, interested executive fellows to get financing, to get into entrepreneurship. But I honestly, I am most proud of people who stay in their organizations but change their approach. Yes, change how they manage, impact change within those organizations, because I honestly don't think open society, and I hope this kind of came across in Thomas's speech. We have the whole, maybe Thomas, you can share, we have the kind of extensive mission statement on our website that you can read, where we almost only focus on the business, on the kind of traditional corporate communities, because we believe that, it's kind of, we can't be in denial that corporations are the major force in our social and economic life. That's just the reality, yes? And there are two views, yes? There is this kind of anti-capitalist, anti-globalist views that sees those corporations as incorrigible, yes? You can't change them, you just need to change the system. And by the way, there is a strong group of our participants and our faculty who actually kind of agree with that view, yes? But there is also another group, more traditional corporate participants and, faculty like me who believe that really you can't change the system fundamentally, or it's not in the cards in the next years and decades, but you have those tremendous social environmental challenges that you need to solve now. You can't wait until the system changes. So what can you do? Well, our response is to change people who actually make up the system so that they start bringing change from within. And I have a lot of very concrete examples of people who, come back to me and say, Maciej, this was the moment when I realized, the sustainability imperative. Not like realize in terms of, okay, we all hear it in the news, but like actually I understood the science behind it, because, the chair of the working group of the International Panel for Climate Change, the UN body that won a Nobel Peace Prize a few years ago, is a CEU professor who has a part of our big picture module with our executive fellows and discusses those very issues, yes? I did realize the importance of on the impact of glass ceilings, yes, and gender equality in workplace relations. Again, not because, of course, we all heard about it, yes, we heard about Me Too movement, but it's different type of understanding when you see studies that show, and like you discuss the studies, you dive deep into the studies that discuss how, systemic evidence, yes, not anecdotal evidence, but kind of deep comparative evidence. So this is the kind of things that we believe, where we believe that this is kind of why I come to, what like motivates me to come to work every day. Yes, that like we are working with those hundreds of very successful executives, and we are giving them tools to kind of look at their work a little differently, for them to succeed and for the society to benefit more from their work. I hope that answers your question. Thomas from Budapest?
Any questions from the audience here or any remarks to this? Okay. I'm moving on to, in view of the time, I would like to move on to the last question, which is very current.
And we can, of course, we have drinks outside, so we can have more questions in the informal side.
The elephant in the room, COVID. How are we dealing with COVID challenges, and how is the program affected by COVID? If you want to elaborate, Maciej.
Yes, we are dealing with COVID like we deal with every issue. We take extreme level of personal care about our student. This is not a mass producing, diploma factory. To give you a few examples, when the COVID struck, we made a decision that we will do everything in our power to keep on-site option available. So many of our competitors, programs, frankly, 2 or almost 3 times more expensive than us, simply moved everything online. We had one online module throughout the pandemic, fully online module. One fully online module in March 2020, when basically it was legally impossible to do it. So imagine from the start of the pandemic, only one module was fully online. Why? Because we took extreme levels of precaution. We broke our classes, which is, frankly, a very significant extra cost in instruction. We broke our classes into smaller sections so people be in a very, very high level of distance. We taught in those huge rooms where people were 2 meters apart when there were no vaccines. Now it's a little more relaxed, as we know. We were the first university. Do you remember that antigen test? No mention the PCR now in Vienna, but antigen test was actually only brought to the market in the fall last year. It's incredible, yes, how the world is changing. So we were the first university in Vienna that adopted in October 2020, which rolled out testing for all our participants, antigen testing for all our participants. And now we do it at every module, every second day. Some people are not perfectly happy with this, but especially when they need to wake up a little earlier to go for this fest. But then, okay, it's not perfect, it's not 100%, but it takes so much pressure off people's mind that when they interact in the hallway, when they're just on the roof deck in the evening, that that there is with vaccines, with the rules that the government mandated rules, which is the 2G in Vienna, yes, that it's an extra layer of protection, is that everybody who is in the room with you, in the morning went through, still pretty reliable testing, yes, and we do it at our expense, no question asked, it's easy, it's available, it's here. So these are kind of, I elaborate on this not only because it's important, but I also want you to understand kind of the philosophy of the place. This is not a mass European-style university. It's much more like an American campus where the relations are much more individual, personal, yes, and it's a community. We always emphasize it's a community, and and so we are colleagues. We are in joint intellectual endeavor, but we are at the end also friends. Thomas?
Thank you very much. I mean, that's it. I think there's nothing to add to the COVID question. Just that your safety is our highest concern, and we take every effort to ensure highest safety here on campus. And if you have any doubts about the program or the testing or whatever, you can still join online. So you have full flexibility in these challenging times with regard to COVID. In view of the time, it's like a punctual landing. It's 8:15. I would like to conclude this open day. I would like to invite the Vienna people for catering and drinks on Vienna campus, and I would like the Budapest guests to enjoy drinks here on Budapest campus. I would like to invite online guests to stay in touch with me, and I would like everybody to invite to book one-on-one consultations with me so we can get to know each other in person. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Peter, for joining us, and greetings to Vienna.